Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 103. We don't make movie for critics. I've done many movies over the years, and there's millions upon millions upon millions of people who've paid to see them. Somebody likes them. My greatest joy is to sit anonymously in a dark theater and watch the audience and pay attention. Michael Bay.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Masterclass, and to be more specific, Werner Herzog's Masterclass. I've now taken this course, guys, and it is amazing. If you guys don't know who Werner Herzog is, he's an Academy Award-winning director. If you've heard his voice, you'll know who he is. He directed Grizzly Man, among other great documentaries and feature films. He's got a total of 70 feature films, plus over 50 awards. It's remarkable. So he decided to team up with Masterclass to create an amazing online resource for filmmakers as he teaches you, as he says, the essentials of filmmaking that you can learn within 2 weeks, and you definitely don't have to go to film school. This is over 5 hours of video. You'll get a workbook that you could download, as well as access to Werner as well. So the course is coming out very, very soon, but if you sign up now, you'll get early access. So all you have to do is head over to indiefilmhustle.com/masterclass to gain instant access to this course. And also don't forget to head over to freefilmbook.com. That's freefilmbook.com to download your free filmmaking or screenwriting audiobook from Audible. Now, guys, today on the show, we have Joel Holland. Joel Holland, man, is the definition of hustle. This guy basically started an empire with basically a camera. He went out, started shooting some video, and fast forward a few years, and he's got a $30 million company. He is the CEO of VideoBlocks, which is a industry disruptor, without question. He has shaken up the stock footage industry and has helped a tremendous amount of filmmakers be able to make money from their footage. And it's real easy and all that kind of good stuff, but we'll go over that all in the interview. And just to, just full disclosure, VideoBlocks is a sponsor of the show. But I actually asked Joel to be on the show purely because his story is so inspiring, and it's a real good example of what can happen when you hustle really, really hard and you're smart and you see where there's opportunities. And that's exactly what Joel did. He took advantage of a hole in the marketplace and decided to kind of revolutionize stock footage, also audio, stock music, stock graphics now, and all sorts of stuff that the VideoBlocks empire is growing into. So guys, really, if you want to be inspired, sit back and relax and get ready to take some notes and enjoy my interview with Joel Holland. Guys, I'd like to welcome to the show Joel Holland. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you, man. So listen, after doing my research on you, Joel, I found that you are the definition of the word hustle. I thought I hustled, but you definitely have. You are a hustler, and the best use of that term.
I appreciate that, and I take that as definitely as a compliment. We've all heard the different axioms, but I think there's just no. Like, an idea only gets you so far. The hustle is what kind of gets you over the finish line. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, honestly, ideas are almost worthless sometimes unless you put. They are worthless unless you put hustle behind it.
Totally.
Because all of us have ideas. And for me specifically, we all have. I want to make a movie, or I'm going to write a song, or I'm going to write a book. But unless you actually start putting that hustle behind it, it's absolutely useless.
Yep. 100%.
So please, let's first off and can you please tell me the story about how you interviewed Arnold Schwarzenegger while you were in school?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So that was years ago when I was in high school. And, basically I was a sophomore in high school trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I was kind of mesmerized by the world of business and journalism and Hollywood. And, there were just so many interesting career paths. I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. And when I went to the career office, their descriptions and answers were just really textbook boring. And so I decided, what better way to find out, what I want to do than to go ask the people that are at the top of their career, right? Top of the path in any given industry. And so I approached a local nonprofit in the DC area that did video production. And I said, hey, look, I have this idea. I want to go out, I want to interview very interesting people and get their advice for teens who are preparing for college and internships in life. And, and their answer was, look, you seem super ambitious, but you have no connections, no contacts. So if you can somehow pull together a list of people who are willing to sit down and be interviewed, then we'll be willing to give you a camera crew and a little budget.
Wow.
And yeah, so exactly. So that was exciting. But then, so there was the idea, right? The idea was go interview fascinating people. Now the hustle part was probably the most important. And I think part of the reason I had so much giddy up and go is that I was young and super naive. So to me, like, why wouldn't you be able to reach out to a person like Arnold Schwarzenegger and try to have them sit down with you to talk, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think most logical people would say, well, because they're super busy and they're in another world and like 7 billion other people want to talk to them. But I was just naive. And so I just started reaching out to interesting people and basically begging, bartering and, pleading to get them to sit down and do these interviews, and managed to get a good list of individuals for our first. Basically, I built like a New York City trip. And it was going to be David Neeleman, the founder of JetBlue, Atusa Rubinstein, who started 17 Magazine, a couple of guys who were running the American Stock Exchange. So,
right.
and then the last one, the biggest one, was Steve Forbes, and that was someone who I had just literally written to the editor at ForbesMagazine.com just over and over again to that email address, and after like months and months, I think wore them down. They're like, dude, kid, just leave us alone. Fine. Like, Steve will sit down with you, but please, for the love of God, leave us alone. And so luckily, the production company, this group called Kids Online, said, all right, let's do this. And we went to New York, we shot these interviews, and it became part of an ongoing series that we called Streaming Futures. And that, over time, we ended up doing 150 interviews with really interesting people. And the coup de grace was probably Arnold Schwarzenegger. And as a good segue, that interview with Arnold was also the real kind of kick in the pants to start what is now VideoBlocks.
Yeah, I wanted to know, how did that one interview kind of change the course of your entire life?
Totally. So it basically went like this. It took months, like probably 4 or 5 months, to get Arnold Schwarzenegger to actually agree to sit down to do an interview. And we flew out to Los Angeles. We had our crew. We interviewed him. It was like a 20-minute, two-camera interview. His advice was fascinating, right? Because, here's a guy who came from Austria with nothing, not a penny in his pocket, became a bodybuilding champion, actor, and he was about to become governor, right? Like, what a trifecta. So great interview, great advice. We then went back to Virginia, and I'm editing this thing together, and I have this like unfortunate realization, oh no, this is boring as shit. And not because of the advice, but because of the production value. Basically, it was, I always say this, but it was Charlie Rose intended for a teenage audience, which is not a good connection, right?
Not a really, not the hippest of connections you can make.
Totally. So total mismatch. So good advice, really like dry and boring to watch because it was just me and Arnold talking. And so I started looking at Discovery Channel to try to figure out how these guys were taking relatively mundane topics, educational topics, and making them super interesting to watch. And what I learned was it was all about the way they edited this stuff together. It was fast cuts, right? The camera was changing every 2 to 3 seconds. There was music. There were like interstitials, transitions. There were effects, and there was a ton of stock media. So if if someone's talking, a lot of times they might give you 2 seconds to that person's talking head, and then cut to an aerial shot from a helicopter of what they're describing. So I saw that and I said, dude, I need to do this for this Arnold Schwarzenegger interview. I need an aerial shot of the Hollywood sign, right? Like the Hollywood sign from a helicopter, nice and smooth, right as we're opening this thing.
Right.
I need some music. I need, to make this thing pop. And what I came to find out was stock media at the time, and this was 2003, was not a thing. I mean, there were two companies, like CNN Image Source and maybe, some other big agencies, but you had to pay thousands and thousands of dollars.
Oh, it was obscene. I remember
Yes.
looking for that in the 90s, looking
Totally.
for stock footage for commercials and stuff. And it was like, oh my God, it was so freaking cost prohibitive, like one shot. And then there was the rights thing, like
Yes.
if you're going to do it for this, it's this much. If you're going to do it for this, it's this much. And if you do that, I'm like, Jesus, man, it was so ridiculous.
Well, exactly. And so there it is. Like I was confronted with the ridiculousness of cost and licensing. You had to pay by the second. You had to pay for different, if it was US distribution versus international distribution, whether you wanted internet rights or television rights. It was crazy. And so, look, I think this goes back to me being young and naive, but to me, I was like, there's an opportunity here to create stock footage and sell it at a price point that's inexpensive enough that hobbyists, enthusiasts, and documentarians can afford it. Basically, people like me. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why is nobody doing this? And so instead of thinking, oh, maybe nobody's doing it for a reason, I said, hey, looks like an opportunity. And I took a year off between high school and college, bought some equipment, and started shooting. And that was kind of how I tested my theory.
Yeah, very, very. Yeah, I was going to ask you. Well, I have a bunch of questions about how you took off because I know there's a deeper question there. But one thing that came to mind too about being ignorant, not being naive. But I was watching an interview with Orson Welles, and because he was 23 when he made Citizen Kane, and they asked him, "How were you so brave when you did all these things and innovative?" He's like, "No, I was ignorant."
Yes, exactly.
Ignorance.
I didn't know any better.
The ignorance is the best form of bravery, or best form of any of that kind of stuff, because you just don't know any better. So
100%. Which is why I always think it's like the younger you can start your entrepreneurial path, right? Or any path. Like the younger you start your path of being a filmmaker or a documentarian, like young is good. Because you haven't had time to become jaded or time to start overthinking things.
With me, it's been the opposite. It's like I started young, then I got jaded, and then now I'm back to my mentality of being young again. Just
I love it.
Because you have to. It's true. It's true. And like if you tell me like right now, if you go, Alex, can you get Arnold Schwarzenegger on your podcast? I'd be like, oh man, I'd say everything you just said. Like, oh God, everybody wants him. How am I going to get him? All this kind of stuff. But you had youth and ignorance on your side.
That's it. Youth and ignorance and
hustle.
But you also, it's funny, you realize that everything in life is a two-way street and kind of everything in life revolves around incentive. And so at first, when I was trying to get someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I was thinking too much me. Like I want him to be on my show because it'll be good for me. Well, that doesn't work when you reach out because how does it benefit him?
Right.
And so what I realized was, well, a lot of these, people have, these high level individuals have passion projects that they're really, passionate about. And for him, it was Arnold's All-Stars. Mm-hmm. So he was working with kids. Mm-hmm. And so I started going through his nonprofit and saying, hey, like, this is the connection. You're going to help us, but we're also going to help you because this will be beneficial for Arnold's All-Stars. And we'll do, and that's the advice that I think is pretty much blanket for anything you do in life is find the incentive for the other person and make sure it's a two-way street. And then when those things, when those streets align, boom.
Yeah, I think that's a big mistake. A lot of entrepreneurs, filmmakers, and people in general, they always just like, oh, I'm going to get this person and I'm going to interview this person, or I want 15 minutes with this person or an hour. Like, well, what is that person? What's in it for that person other than just them being very nice? There has to be a two-way street, and there has to be value. You have to provide value to them
100%
before you even attempt to go after someone of that stature. Now, again, from my research that I've seen, you weren't just a hustler early on. You were a hustler really early on when you were making $20 a day selling golf balls at the age of 10.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you moved up to selling on eBay at 12, and you were making almost $20,000 a year selling on eBay. For a 12-year-old, that's like $1 million.
Yeah, it is. It was very real money, and And I was somehow good about saving it, so I would every month. My goal was to send $2,000 to an investment advisor I had, and so I tried to save money every month.
You had
And
an investment advisor at 12.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing. That's so great.
But you know, so I think that where all that comes from was from a young age. I just loved selling. Like, so the art of the hustle, the art of selling something, is to me a huge rush, and it's a rush that I still get today. And because when you think about a transaction, like if you sell something, it goes back to what we were just talking about. You're finding something that someone needs. So you're finding something that it's they have an incentive to buy it, and a reason to give you money, and obviously you enjoy getting the money. And so I loved selling things because it felt like A, I was providing something valuable because people were willing to pay for it, and then B, everybody was better off. Like the buyer got a product they wanted, and I got money. And so I became obsessed with that. I mean, and I think sales, just the art of selling, is just a very, very exciting thing, and I think kind of the core of any good business, of course.
Right, and I'll tell you what. When I first sold my first short film, when I was literally packing them myself and labeling them and sending them out, when I first released it and hearing those PayPal dings,
oh my goodness,
I'll never forget that I did a launch sequence without me knowing I did a launch sequence. Like I had no idea I was doing. I did a 6-month launch sequence for this movie. I had no idea what I was doing. It was just instinctual. And when I finally released the DVD, all I hear was ding, 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 ding. I'll never forget that sound. If it's like the greatest feeling.
100%. And then it's validation, right? Like it's total validation for the film you created.
Right. And then then comes the horrible part. It was like, oh man, we got to pack these. We have to ship them. How are we going to mail them? We didn't have there was no mail printing or anything like that. We had to stamp each one. We must have had like 150 sales in the first day, and which was huge for a short film.
Of course.
And I'm like, we're handwriting the addresses. It was just madness. It was madness. But anyway,
but those are the good problems, right? Like that, like yes,
too many sales. Too many sales.
But I know the feeling. That feeling you're describing is just magical.
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. And I've been preaching to my listeners, that are filmmakers today, that they have to become entrepreneurs in order to make it kind of like in the indie film world. Would you agree on that?
I would, because I think it goes back to what we opened with, which is, a good idea is only as good as the hustle it goes with. And so a good film, you can make the greatest documentary, but unless you know how to get out there and get it in front of people, which would be the entrepreneurial part, then it's never going to go anywhere. And I bet you there are so many amazing documentaries that are sitting on shelves because the hustle part never got added to the equation. And by the same token, there are a ton of documentaries that have gone mainstream that are kind of not that great,
right? But
it's because they did such a good job selling them,
right? And I think that's an analogy for not only the business of filmmaking, but as well as any place, because there's some people that you're like, how did that guy get that promotion? How is that guy making $100 million movies? He's not that good. Yep. Like, how did he get there? Well, there's so many other talented people. I'm like, well, they hustled. They sold themselves. They did things that they were willing to do, things that you might have not been able to willing to do as far as the hustle part is concerned. And that's such a key component to, I think, every aspect in life, but I think specifically in the film business. Now, can you tell me a little bit about the whole that whole journey of how you started to go out and shoot and did all that through? I think it was through high school, correct? When you started shooting your stock footage and trying to create your company?
Yes, exactly right. So it was basically towards the end of high school where we had this realization, or I had this realization, that there needed to be an affordable source of stock media for people like me, documentarians, independents. And I graduated in 2003, and I was accepted to go to college up in Boston to a school called Babson. And I contacted Babson. I said, hey, I'd really like to defer for a year, take a year off, and try to start this business. Is that okay? And luckily, it's purely an entrepreneurial business school, so they were very understanding, and they said, sure, do your thing. We'll see you in a year. And so I took that year, and I said, this is going to be 1 year where I try to validate whether or not there really is a need for this. And I bought I remember my first camera was a Canon GL2.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Beautiful 3-chip camera. Cost me like $2,000.
Is that before or after the DVX 100?
before.
That was before
Yeah.
the DVX. Yeah, because so you were still shooting 30 frames. You weren't shooting 24 frames yet.
That's right. It was
Right.
it was 30 frames, and this was SD. I mean, this is like I was shooting on mini DV tapes.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
and like I then capture it, and I'd up-res it a bit to to look really sharp, distribute in photo JPEG, and no one was the wiser. Like it just looked like it looked the same as a Canon XL1. And what I realized was the shots, the way you compose a shot, and this obviously this applies to film, but the way you compose the shot is much more important than the equipment you use. And so I started traveling with this camera. I had a nice little carbon fiber tripod, a backpack with all my batteries and gear, and I just hit the road. And I took that year and I traveled to like 33 U.S. cities. I decided that I would start by hitting U.S. cities and trying to shoot them in a way that would be useful for an editor. So skylines, all the different sites, daytime, nighttime, and I started hawking it on eBay, right, to start getting the initial sales. Try to figure out what to call it.
So hold on. So let's stop for a second. So you actually went out and just shot a whole bunch of footage. Very, very organized, obviously structured, the great cities of Boston and New York and all that kind of stuff, I'm assuming. You would go on eBay and then you would just, I guess you created a company name at that point, like an eBay store at that point to do that?
Yeah. So I already had, so I had been selling on eBay for a long time, right? Because I had, when I was doing that $20,000 a year in sales as a 12-year-old, I was selling software. And so my eBay handle was Hobby Auctions, and I had like 2,000 feedback, a shooting star, and all that good stuff. So when I started, I shot Washington D.C. first because that was my backyard. So I shot Washington D.C. I put it on eBay, and I created multiple listings to try to figure out how much to charge and what to call it. And so some of them were like Washington D.C. B-roll, Washington D.C. stock footage, Washington D.C. stock video. It was between those three terms. I couldn't figure out what would be best. And sales started coming in from wedding videographers. That was actually the first buyers were wedding videographers. And that was cool. And that was, emboldening and all that. And so then I took the money from those initial sales and I bought a plane ticket to Seattle. And that was the first place. I'd never been to Seattle before. Flew out to Seattle. Had enough money to stay in the Best Western right beside the Space Needle for like 2 nights. And I'd go out during the day. I'd start the crack of dawn and shoot, walk the whole city, shoot, go back to my hotel room at night and start editing, put it up on eBay to start selling. So by the time I'd be back home, I could actually ship it. And that kind of progression, I would basically take sales, buy a ticket, go to the next place. Eventually, I launched a name for it, and I called it Footage Firm. I liked the I liked the alliteration, and it described what we did. And then I built a website. And so once I had customers, I started trying to incentivize those customers to buy again. So if I went out and shot another city like Boston, then I'd go to my customer list, and I knew that number one, nobody probably needed it right then, but if I came up with the right incentive, right, the right price point, then they would buy it and just hold it. And so that kind of became the evolution of shifting from eBay to my own website and my own thing.
And you never touched, by the way, during your travels, you never touched that nest egg that you created during all your early years when you were a teenager, correct? You always used the proceeds to kind of grow and go like to tour the country. Correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. So the only time I touched part of the nest egg was to buy the Canon GL2. So I think I took a couple $1,000s out to buy the camera and a tripod. But that was it. And so it's funny because in my mind, and obviously that's very different these days. Now, you start a business, it's kind of accepted that you lose money for a while or you have a burn rate. But as a kid, I didn't understand that. To me, it was, there's no such thing as losing money. I was so frugal. I was like, I have to always be making money. You can't lose money.
That's just crazy.
So that's a crazy concept. And so I only knew how to use money that was coming in. So cash flow, like I understood cash flow very well from a young age, which I think was very beneficial for bootstrapping the business.
Now, let me ask you, if you don't want me asking, how much were you able to generate in that little nest egg as a teenager? If you don't want me asking that number, give or take.
it's a good question. I think I had it up to probably $40,000-$50,000.
Jesus.
By the time I was, I mean, dude, it might have been closer. I think by the time I finished high school, and this had been a goal. Actually, this is funny. I had two goals. One was, by the time I finished high school, I wanted to have saved $100,000, and I think I got very close. I think I was within striking distance of $100,000 in the bank. The second goal was, by the time I finished college, I wanted to have $1 million in the bank, and I didn't hit that one by the end of college, but I did within the first year out of college. And so I think that and this is another thing that I think is actually very useful. It sounds silly, but like I made dream boards as a kid.
Yeah,
so
the secret.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. Like you kind of end up manifesting the reality that you focus on.
Absolutely.
And it's not through magic. It's just that the subconscious mind is very powerful. And when you say, and when you actually write down and commit to, hey, I'm going to make this film and it's going to get distribution at Sundance. Well, everything you do in life from that point forward, that's in the back of your mind. And so the actions you take, the people you meet, the things you think about are on some level working towards that goal. So I think there's a lot of power in doing that.
Oh no, I mean, I did the same thing when I started Indie Film Hustle. Like I was like, you know what, I'm going to launch the site. I started it from scratch. And I'm like, in a year, I'm going to have this much, hopefully this kind of revenue coming in, and I have this kind of success as a podcast and things like that. And it happened, like beyond actually what I originally thought, like way beyond, what I originally thought. So it does work without question. Yeah. And I actually said earlier this year, I'm like, I think at the beginning of the year, I'm like, guys, I put it out there. I'm like, I'm making a feature film this year. I'm making my first feature film. I'm going to actually just go out and do it, and I'm not going to stop waiting around. And
love it.
4 or 5 months later, I have a feature film. I'm getting it ready for Sundance right now as we speak.
Dude, that's amazing. Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Well, I haven't gotten in yet, but I'm
super exciting.
I haven't gotten in yet, but at least I've made it, and I'm going to submit it. But yeah, I did it, and it was so quick, and it's fascinating when you put your mind to something like that, and you just like, let's just go do it. And
not only that, I think it's you put your mind to it, but you also publicly committed to doing it.
Yeah,
and
that's another big thing.
Huge. And I bet if you had not done that, if you hadn't put it out there to your friends and your listeners, like the chances of you having accomplished it by now are probably much less, because you'd have an excuse to be like, I'll do it, next year or next year. It's easy to kick the can down the road.
Oh,
but
and then 10 years, and then you wake up, it's 10 years gone by.
Totally. And then that's super sad. Yeah. So no, I think making public commitments, even if it doesn't always work out, that's okay. I mean, it's better than the alternative of not making the commitment and it also not working out, right? Like, yeah, I think there's something very powerful to that too.
There's a website, I forgot the name of it, but there's a website that if you actually do that, like you go in there and you basically, I think the thing is like you put a goal in, like let's say you want to lose 30 pounds. All right. And you publicly put it out there, if you don't achieve the goal, you put up a substantial amount of money. Let's say it's $1,000. If that if you don't do the goal, that $1,000 goes to one of 3 organizations that you absolutely hate.
Yes, dude, I knew you were going to say that.
Like, it's so brilliant. Like,
and the example is, because this is the example, dude, I love it. The example is, if you hate guns,
right, NRA,
and your money's going to the NRA.
Yeah.
And so now you've got this incredible incentive to hit your goal, because if not, you're not only letting yourself down, you're literally going against what you believe in, which is awesome.
Somebody put that website together, and I'm sure they're doing quite well.
Oh, I love it. It's just amazing.
So when you launched Footage Firm, Footage Firm was started on eBay, and I'm assuming you put footage on DVDs and shipped them out, because there was no digital distribution at that time.
That's correct. So at first, actually, I was shipping on mini DV tape and beta tape. I mean, so it was like beta
SPs, yeah, of course.
DV cam. So I was actually I actually was making tapes and shipping them
by yourself.
By myself, right? Like I had this in my dorm room. So after that year off, I went to Babson. In my dorm room, I had tape decks. I'd rush back from class. I would check my orders. I'd start burning a tape. I'd have to get it to FedEx by 6:30 at night, right? So every day was.
Yeah, I know those days,
dude. And every day was it was that crazy hustle to try to get it there before deadline, because filmmakers need, like when they need something, they need
Oh
it.
no, yeah,
You know what I mean? They need it yesterday.
That's why it's so wonderful now, where you could just literally just download it.
Oh my god, yes, 100%.
It's so amazing. You're like, I need that now, not in 3 hours, not in next day. Now,
yes, and we were good at staying in front of the trends, because so we did. I moved to data DVD as soon as that became kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. One of my claims to fame, I shipped over 1 million data DVDs of footage.
Jesus.
Within I think it was a 2-year period.
So that was cool. You manually burned 1 million DVDs?
So at first, again, in my dorm room, I had one of these robots that would, I think it had like 12 discs you could burn at a time. And it had this like robotic arm, would take one, put it in one, beep, 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 and it would run all through the night, cranking out DVDs.
Yeah.
By the time I graduated from Babson, that was like that year I hit an inflection point where I really started learning how to market this stuff well.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was beyond me. Like I could not have, we'd do an email blast and have like thousands of orders come in.
Mm-hmm.
And I could never have burned enough. At first though, it was kind of what you described with your film. When you had like 100 orders, you're like, oh boy, now I got to get these out.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time I sent an email campaign to Creative Cow, which is one of our industry, outlets.
Oh yeah, sure.
And $25,000 worth of orders came in within an hour. And I was like, dude, holy shit. Number one, this is the most money I've ever seen at one time. Number two, we now have a business. This is real.
This is a real situation here.
It just got real. And number three, how in the world am I going to get all these DVDs burned and shit?
So our problem, but magnified.
So I went on Craigslist. I found a couple people on Craigslist locally, and we literally just all day and night for like days and days were burning and shipping, burning and shipping, burning and shipping. Then I found a fulfillment company. So I found a place in Colorado that could actually on demand burn and then ship the DVDs. Perfect. And so by the time we were then doing on the regular, orders of this size, it was no longer my problem, which was a huge relief.
Right. And that's, I think, a lot of business people forget that they're like, you're as an entrepreneur, sometimes you want to do everything and you want to cover, and as filmmakers, you want to do everything. You want to cover every aspect. And I'm horrible at that because I do everything. I do everything. But now I'm starting, but if you keep doing that, you will bottleneck yourself to a certain point where you can't grow. And that's kind of where I'm at now with Indie Film Hustle. Like I've gotten to this point where, I don't know if you know this, Joe, everything on the site I do. Everything from the graphics to the writing to the podcast to the videos to marketing, I do it all. So I'm now getting to that point where it's like I'm bottlenecking. Like if I'm going to, and by the way, I also did a movie. And I have a post company. I do all this other stuff. So it's like I have to do something to kind of move the needle. And now I'm letting go of things.
Exactly. And so I think that this is a really interesting point. And this is something that all of us learn at a certain point. But just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Because I made the same mistake. I was like, hey, I can answer the phones. I can respond to emails. I can burn the product and ship it. I'm like, I can do it all. I can save a fortune and maintain the quality that I want. But what you realize is you only have so much time. And really, you only have so much mental capacity. And so the expense is the growth, right? It's hitting that next phase. Mm-hmm. And so, one of the examples, do you know Froknowsphoto?
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, so he's a very, very popular YouTuber around photography.
Okay.
Right? So he's got millions of, subscribers and followers, and like he's got a huge, amazing production. Mm-hmm. And what he realized was like he's got the mind for creating the great content. He's an incredible interviewer, a great personality. Mm-hmm. And today when you meet with him, you realize he has a whole staff, right? He has a guy who sets up the interviews, who manages and handles all of the advertising that's separate, actually sells the ads, someone who, does the sound, the video. And it was getting that crew around him that opened him up to being able to really blow this thing up. And I think that's the next phase, but it's hard. It's really hard to let go and relinquish. You know what I mean?
No, it's so tough because you're like, I could do it better. I could do, but it's so horrible, man. It's wonderful and horrible all at the same time. Because, you know, doing like, and I know a lot of filmmakers have the same problem. They're like, oh, I want to be the editor, and I want to be the colorist, and I want to be the DP, and I want to do this. And I'm horrible because I just literally did that on my movie. But but it's also 20 years of experience and so on. And it worked for this kind of movie. If all of a sudden I had $100 million movie, I'm not doing all those jobs. You can't.
Right.
You can't do something like that. But again, that's in that growth stage. So I think that's really important for people to understand that you eventually, at the beginning, like it took you years before you finally started bringing in other people. You know, you doing everything yourself, but then you get to that point in any company, any endeavor, whether it be a creative endeavor with your films, or building up a company or something like that you have to relinquish a little bit. Now, you were the only cinematographer and cameraman when you launched Footage Firm, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
And then, and then how did you bring other people in?
So I had this realization while in school that I could not I really couldn't physically do everything because I had class and I had a social life. So I couldn't actually be traveling and shooting and selling and doing everything else. So I sat down and I kind of said, well, what am I best at? Mm-hmm. Right? If I'm best at shooting, if I think I'm best at the cinematography, then I'll do that. And maybe I should hire someone to do the marketing and e-commerce. Mm-hmm. But what I realized was actually my strength was sales, mm-hmm. right? Like what I was really good at was figuring out how to take a product, find a market fit, and then sell it. And so the videography, though I enjoyed it, was actually not my strong suit. And there were plenty of people out there that were much better than me. Right. So I started outsourcing it. And so I basically, again, went, back in the day, but I went to Craigslist and started finding videographers located in different cities. I would look at their demo reels, find people I liked, and then pay them to shoot a city. And I'd buy the rights. And did that for a while. And then realized to scale, I needed to kind of open it up a bit. And so then I started allowing anybody to shoot and sell through Footage Firm. And I would then sell them on, when it sold. I would then pay them when it sold. Mm-hmm. And I'd give them 50. It was a 50-50 split. Mm-hmm. And so I had, videographers submitting content from all over the world. And, our actual library grew very quickly. And then they would get paid when it sold. And I loved that model, right?
Yeah, it's a great model.
It's a great model. It's today's platform model, and it's very scalable. It's very self-sufficient, and yeah. So that was the evolution from doing it myself to realizing this is not my strong suit. There are other people better than me. Let's let them do that.
Now, when did Footage Firm turn into VideoBlocks, or did you open up VideoBlocks separately? How did VideoBlocks come to life? Yeah, so it was an evolution. At one point, they were both running. So basically, you fast forward to 2009. Mm-hmm. Footage Firm is doing really well. I mean, I think we did like a couple $1 million in sales in 2009. We got up to by 2011 like $4 million in sales. We only had like 3 or 4 employees. So it was doing really well. That's insane.
It was great. It was great. But I saw the writing on the wall, which was we're shipping DVDs, and the future is obviously digital distribution. Mm. And I'm like, how do I make sure that we could keep doing what we're doing and hang on to this for a while. Mm. But not only will it stop growing, eventually it'll go into obsolescence. So
the blockbuster phase, as we like to
exactly. Call it. And so but then the complication was, well, if I launch a product that has digital distribution, I'm literally competing with myself, mm-hmm. and I'm going to cannibalize my sales. Is that dumb? But I realized that if I didn't do it, someone else was going to, mm-hmm. and I preferred to be my own competitor than to have some other guy mm-hmm. taking all of my business. Mm-hmm. And so I launched VideoBlocks in 2010 as kind of like as a test, and started promoting it to some of our Footage Firm customers, and it was a hit. Mm-hmm. And so then we started advertising it to some of the industry publications like Creative Cow and DV Maker, and it worked. People started subscribing, and this concept of paying a membership mm-hmm. to get unlimited download access to a library of content. Basically, there were cues I took from Netflix. Yeah, it started working, and so FootageFirm.com and VideoBlocks.com, they both continued running parallel for probably a year or two. And sure enough, Footage Firm just continued its downward spiral as VideoBlocks got stronger and stronger. So VideoBlocks ate Footage Firm. And so today, Footage Firm Inc. is still our parent company, but VideoBlocks is our signature product. And then we obviously launched graphic stock to get into vectors and design elements and photos. And we launched audio blocks to get into production music. Yeah. And so those kind of 3 products.
Yeah, I want to talk about the other 2 in a second. But the one thing I find fascinating is that you were able to see the writing on the wall where like a company like Blockbuster did not. And you actually were able to, instead of like switching Footage Firm over to digital, where it would compete within itself, you actually created an entirely other company. So it would basically be, and I'm going to use a term that hopefully everybody listening will understand, you're Blockbuster Video, and then you create Netflix. And then slowly as the video parts goes down, Netflix starts going up. And then all of a sudden to finally where Blockbuster Video is now gone and Netflix has taken over, but you've done it yourself. And it's brilliant, actually really brilliant. And I don't think there was anybody else doing it. Was there? Were there other competitors that got into the digital distribution of stock footage as early as you?
Yes. So actually there were a couple, but nobody had the same. Nobody had the subscription model. So we were the first and honestly still the only one really that does subscription-based stock video. Some people have subscriptions for credits, which I think is kind of bullshit. Like you're just prepaying for credits.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that either. I'd rather just give $10 a month. Yeah. I'm good. It's like insane.
Yeah, it's exactly like don't call it a subscription if it's not a subscription. But so there were other groups that were selling by the clip, and you could then purchase and download. Like one company comes to mind, Artbeats.
Yes, fucking Artbeats.
Yeah, yeah. And look, they had really good content.
They have amazing content.
But it was too expensive.
Are they still around?
So, I think they're there. I think they're kind of limping around.
But they were all DVD based. I remember in our world, in the film world and working in television, Artbeats was always around. That you just buy these collections of like wonderful stock footage. I mean, really was beautiful stuff. It was gorgeous,
so expensive,
but it's so price prohibitive.
Yes.
And then of course everybody would then burn the DVDs. all around the office.
And so this was kind of like my thesis back then and still today was like, sure, there's a high-end market and, good for, today it's like Shutterstock and these others that go after the high-end market, the big production companies, the ad agencies with big, deep pockets. But the group, the individuals that we're most interested in are the documentarians, the hobbyists, the enthusiasts who are super ambitious about creating great stuff, but don't have a ton of money. And again, this is not a pity project and it's not a nonprofit. The reason that I love that group is that it's a huge group of people. And while there might be,
it's a niche, but it's still huge.
But it's huge compared to the professionals. So like there's like maybe so we have 150,000 paying members. Maybe a couple thousand of them are the NBCs and ABCs of the world, right? Because they're all customers. Paramount, they're all customers of ours, and they're great. But it's 2,000 of the 150,000, and so really the mass creative class, that mass market, is what I'm most interested in. And the way that you help that group is by making your product super affordable.
No, absolutely. And it's the Netflix model. It's what they did. They finally took all the crap out of like renting videos, though I do have a big soft spot for video stores, but they made it so easy. First just mailing DVDs, but now like streaming. And then also, and there's one thing that we're not talking about when during this whole transition from Footage Firm to VideoBlocks, there was this thing called HD that showed up. That kind of screwed a lot of your footage out of the, because no one downloads SD anymore if they can help it. So everything had to be HD. So that whole transition of you had thousands and thousands of hours in SD, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, I gotta go back out in New York and shoot the skyline again.
100%. Same thing's happening now with 4K.
Yeah.
So while 4K is really still kind of in its infancy, and not a lot of people are downloading it, you fast forward a couple of years and HD will be SD. Nobody is going to want HD. It's going to be garbage. Because 4K is just better.
I'm just curious about that because, I don't want to sound like the old fart in the room that doesn't see the future. I think in the future, 4K will be the industry standard. But like there's at a certain point, don't you believe that, and now we're getting off topic of stock footage, but don't you believe that the consumer is just getting tired of like every year something new is coming out? Like at a certain point, like, I just bought my 65-inch HD monitor. Now I got to get a 2K monitor. Now I got to get a 4K monitor. Oh, I bought the Blu-rays. Now I got to buy the 4K Blu-rays I was streaming here. It's so kind of like, I think at a certain point, I think like after 4K, what are we going to do? 8K? Like I know a lot of these the new Red camera shoots 8K. I'm like, well, great.
Right.
But mastering on film for a theatrical distribution, 2K is fine. You know what I mean? Like it's perfectly fine. They've been doing it for over 100 years. I mean, it's completely fine. So at a certain point, where do we stop? Because there's going to get a point where our eyes can't tell the difference. And actually, there was an article in Forbes that said that 4K monitors are kind of BS because you can't tell the difference from it sitting back 10 feet. It's really hard to see the difference unless you're like up next to it, which nobody watches television like that. So what?
Or unless the monitor gets much larger. This is actually a very interesting discussion because I think. So your first question was, when does it stop? I think the answer is never.
Yeah, right.
So like just like computers continually get faster and more powerful, video technology will continue getting higher resolution and better. And so that progression will never end. Does it plateau? So that's an interesting question. Now I think it's silly when I go to the store and I see a 42-inch 4K television. That makes no sense to me because that just is illogical. Right. Whereas an 80-inch HD television makes no sense. And so I think what 4K enables are people are going to be able to start buying 80 and 100-inch televisions. So you're going to have these massive wall-sized televisions that actually look sharp.
Unless the walls turn into, like in Total Recall, they actually just turn into televisions. The walls, each wall is a television.
Totally. Well, and I bet you, look, if you're looking into the far future, walls will be organic LEDs, right? Like I think that you will, just like you paint a wall, walls will actually be screens. And you're absolutely right. No longer will you have a device you have to like plug in and put on the wall. The wall will be your device. So I think that's absolutely correct. But in the meantime, you're right. I think 4K makes sense because it enables you to jump from 65-inch televisions, which a lot of us own, to the next thing, which is like 70 and 80-inch, which are huge.
Oh, it's ridiculous. You need a bigger house at that point. You can't put it in an apartment. Like it's too close.
It's like, it's legitimately a home theater at that point. Now 8K, I think 8K. I mean, we're talking. Well, I don't think 8K becomes a like television device for like at least a decade, if that. It might just be
resolution and repositioning, all that stuff.
Repositioning, totally. So it's like you could now shoot a shot and now grab 4 shots out of that shot. So you get to like shoot it, and then in post, you can now change composition. And that's pretty powerful.
It is. We do it all the time. I mean, Red Camera actually was the one that kind of started this whole damn thing with the 4K Red 1 back in 2000, I think, was it 8 or 9?
7. I think it was 7.
7. Like when they promised it in 7, I don't think it actually showed up until 08.
Right.
But they kind of like blew everybody out of the water with that, and that's kind of what started the whole jump. I think everybody started because I don't think if Red comes out, I think we're waiting around a few more years for 2K, let alone 4K. I think they definitely pushed the envelope. Now VideoBlocks is definitely an industry disruptor, without question. And I've been before we ever knew each other or did any business together. We I was a member of VideoBlocks for a lot of my projects that I've been using over the years. But I love audio blocks and graphic stock. Can you talk a little bit about audio blocks and graphic stock?
Totally. So I think, first, here's how we came up with them. VideoBlocks was growing, it was doing well. And I'm a firm believer that when something's going right, that's when you need to start getting really worried. Right? Like, because that tends to be, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, wait, there's too much money here. What's going on?
Well, and that's when people tend to get complacent.
Yep.
And so it's usually when you're on the top that you fall because you think, I figured it out. I'm the smartest person in the room, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, your competitors are scheming to take you down. Mm-hmm. And so things are going well, VideoBlocks, and we sat back and said, all right, what's next? Like, we can't just be happy with this. How do we come up with the next move? And the answer was stupid simple. It was, well, let's just ask the customers, right? Let's literally poll our customers and ask them point blank, what else would you pay money for that we don't currently offer? Mm-hmm. And that was a question we asked in a survey. And the answer that came back was music. They were like, we really want music. Music makes all video better. Mm-hmm. And same problem that video was experienced, music was hard to find, super expensive, and the licensing and rights were outrageous.
Worse than video, I think.
Totally worse than video.
Yep.
And confusing, and it was horrible. So we said, all right, the customers have spoken, they want music. Let's see if we can do this. Could we build the same model, a subscription-based approach to a production music library, but do it in a way that's really, better than what's out there? And we realized, yes, we could. We can go find musicians who have great music, pay them a lot of money, like for their stuff, so they're happy, put it in our library, and then create an interface that's very powerful, or at least we think is powerful to help you discover music. Mm-hmm. And you'll notice on audio blocks, you can you go in and you start by clicking around to say mood and genre and instruments and beats per minute. So you can really customize, and then boom, it comes up with a list of tracks that might work for you. Mm-hmm. And so we built all this based on customer feedback, and we launched it. Even the color scheme, the logo, the name, all of this was from the customers. And it took off and did really well. And it was the same thing with graphic stock. In another survey, the answer was we want graphics and photos. And so graphic stock was born completely out of customer demand. And that's also that product is also doing really well. So yeah, I think that listening to the voice of the people, you can never go wrong.
Yeah, I know, right? And just so everybody listening knows, I'm actually using some music from audio-blocks in my movie. We're going to be using it as a background, coming from a radio in the background, not a score piece, but just something in the background. Because we were like, we really need some new agey music here. I'm like, we'll go to audio-blocks. Perfect. And I don't have to worry about it. And I got the rights to it. I could theatrically release, and it's like, wow, that freedom is so wonderful just to know, if I have a membership, I can download it. And even after my membership's over, I still have the rights to it in perpetuity for projects that I use, correct? Is that correct?
Absolutely right. And that's, yeah. As a filmmaker, you've got so many things to worry about that the last thing you should have to be fretting about is my music going to get me in trouble? Am I going to have to pay extra if this goes international? If I get into, into Sundance, am I going to have to pay for that? And if I distribute it on YouTube, am I going to have to pay for that? So we just made it simple. Mm-hmm. It's pay one fee, use the music any way you want, forever, unlimited distribution worldwide. There's just never anything else to worry about.
And it's fantastic. Now, when you were going out to shoot stuff, what did you know? How did you know what would sell?
Well, good question. So at first, I decided that U.S. cities would be a good place to start because I figured at some point every editor is going to need a shot of New York City or Los Angeles. So that was my starting point. Now, once Footage Firm was launched, I was able to start looking at the search data. So I would just literally look at what people were searching for on our website and use that as my shot list.
Nice.
And that's something we do today, right? So on VideoBlocks, we get, I think, 3 or 4 million searches a month. And we have a team, a data team that analyzes those searches and then actually provides insight to our contributors. So you'll actually get an email that says, here's what was searched. Like we just sent out an email saying that searches for turkey footage are way up, for LGBT footage, for diversity footage, all these terms that are kind of disproportionately up compared to what we have in the library. We then make our videographers aware of that so they can go shoot with insight and make more money.
And your company and yourself, you're pretty transparent as far as your revenue and what you make. Do you mind telling us what the company made last year and this year so people understand the scope of what VideoBlocks has become?
Sure. Yeah. So last year we did a little over $20 million in revenue, and this year we'll do closer to 30. So and you're probably 26 to 30.
And you're a private company still?
Yes. Yep. Private company. We have about 80 employees based out of the Washington, D.C. area. And we've still got, we're still very much that startup, small business hustle company. And we love that. And it's been really fun too. So a year and a half ago, we launched our marketplace on VideoBlocks, where anybody listening, right, can go to contribute.videoblocks.com, sign up for free to start selling footage. And basically when a member, so again, we have 150,000 members, when they search for something on VideoBlocks, they usually look in our unlimited library to try to find something for free included with their membership. But if they can't find it, we then also put marketplace results in there. And those clips are $49 for an HD shot or $199 for 4K. And if they buy through the marketplace, 100% of those proceeds go straight to the shooter.
No.
So yeah, 100%. So like, if you're listening to this and you have footage you want to sell, unlike our competitors who keep, like Shutterstock keeps 70% of every sale, we pay twice as much. So because we pay 100%, you end up making twice as much as you make with our competitors. And so that's become very, that marketplace went from 0 clips to it'll be at 3 million clips by the end of this year.
Of course.
And I think we're going to pay out something like $6 million to contributors this year.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So like that. And we don't include, by the way, we don't include that in our revenues. So when I talk about the revenue number, that's just our membership fees, because all these marketplace sales, it goes right back to the to the creative community. So that's been really fun.
So, so what advice would you have for filmmakers who might want to get into the stock footage game and generate another stream of income? Because it could be, I mean, if you live in a certain area that is remote, or you have something unique, or you could just shoot unique footage of certain things, this could be a nice little revenue stream to help make your movies in the future.
Dude, I would say if you're not already selling your excess footage as stock footage, it's a no-brainer. You have to do it. And we have contributors who are making 6 figures this year, right? Like you're going to make $100,000 to $200,000 this year while sitting back just from us. And by the way, they're also selling through Shutterstock and our other competitors. So while they're focusing on their films and their documentaries, they're making significant money that's just in the background, and it just every month the payments are coming in the door,
and it supports their art.
Totally. And the thing is, you've already done the hard work, right? Like if you're doing a film that takes place in Columbus, Ohio, well, take all the cutting room floor stuff and just turn them into 15 to 30 second clips. You don't have to do anything to them, right? You don't even have to color them, right? No audio, no colorization needed. Just upload them to VideoBlocks. Costs you nothing. And if it sells, you get a payday. So it's really the only cost is not actually monetary, but it's you have to put in keywords and a title. And so that takes a little bit of time, but not that much time. And I think it's more than offset by the money you make.
So what you're telling me is I have to go back to all of my raw footage now over the last 20 years and start looking for stuff to upload to you guys.
Totally. But but don't get overwhelmed. I would set a goal of 10 clips a day, right? Just every day, pick 10 clips at some point throughout the day while you're having your morning coffee. Export them, upload them straight to the website. Boom, done. You're off to the races.
It's pretty remarkable, actually. That's actually a really, it's amazing. And again, what we talk about in the Film Hustle all the time is it's like creating revenue streams from your film, but also just create it so you can make a living doing your art. And this could be a possibility for a lot of filmmakers out there, especially documentary filmmakers, but even other filmmakers who are just in their area and they own their own camera. I'm like, why don't you go out and shoot something and put it up? It doesn't cost you anything. It takes time. That's it.
That's it.
It's pretty amazing. Now, can you speak a little bit about the technical specs needed to submit footage to VideoBlocks?
Sure. So we accept high definition or better. So basically HD or 4K. As long as the shot, we do have a quality review team, but as long as the shots are unique or just well shot, right? Use a tripod, make sure it's not shaky iPhone footage, like that will get rejected. Mm-hmm. But if it's well shot, you just, you upload it and that's it. So there's really not a lot of restrictions or requirements. So any camera you're using, like, for example, I always have my 5D Mark III with me. Mm-hmm. And if I come across something interesting, I put it on a tripod, I shoot some HD footage, I upload it. But I also shoot with my Red Scarlet X. Mm-hmm. And we support, you can upload your R3D files straight to the website, we're the only company that lets you do that. Mm-hmm. And so we'll then take those files and automatically put them, down-res them into 4K and HD. And make the R3D file available. But so basically we do all the heavy lifting on the back end. So you just have to upload a file. We'll automatically recompress it into the various formats that are needed.
And do you support like the Blackmagic Cinema raw files or anything like that yet? Or just we'd have to do all that, the transferring over to HD or to 2K or 4K first? Yeah.
So, something like Blackmagic, we don't support the native files, but mm-hmm. if you just kick it out to an H.264 or a photo JPEG mm-hmm. Is kind of my preferred, mm-hmm. And then upload that. That's usually the workflow is kick it out to as long as it's a .mov file, mm-hmm. whether it's H.264 or photo JPEG, mm-hmm. We take it from there.
Now, can you explain real quick, and just because I talk about this so much, can you please explain the importance of marketing to your business and to every venture in your world, even marketing to a girl to get her to go on a date with you? That's called marketing still.
Totally. So here's the easiest analogy that comes to my mind when you ask that. Think back to our 8th grade basic math equations, a multiplication equation. So you have a great idea multiplied by 0 equals 0. So it doesn't matter how great the idea is, whether it's $1 billion idea or $1 million idea, 1 billion times 0 equals 0. Mm-hmm. And that second holder is the marketing. So you can take a great idea, multiply it by decent marketing, and you'll have decent results. You can take a terrible idea, multiply it by great marketing, you'll have decent results. Or you can take a great idea, multiply it by great marketing, and you'll have outrageously great results. Mm-hmm. And so, I think, when it comes to marketing, a lot of people say, and especially for filmmakers, that's the part I'm uncomfortable with, right? I love making it, I loved creating it, but I just don't want to have to go out there and talk about myself and promote and shamelessly promote.
I'm the artist. I'm just the artist.
Yeah. But you know what? It turns out that's part of the game. And if you believe in your film and you want it to get the proper distribution, you're going to have to whore yourself out a bit, and that's okay, right? That's just how it goes. And the analogy I'd make is to public speaking. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are very uncomfortable getting up and speaking in front of other people, mm-hmm. but it turns out that you can overcome that through practice. Mm-hmm. So anybody who says I can't speak publicly, it means they just haven't done it, right? Then you just need to get up and do it, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you get doing it. Probably the same with filmmaking, right? You look back to the first film you ever made, you probably think it's shit, right?
Yeah, right.
The first stuff I shot, I'm like, that is garbage. But the more you do it, the better you get. And it's the same thing with marketing. You got to start putting the word out there. It's going to be uncomfortable, but soon you're going to love it and realize it's just part of the game. And a great film times great marketing equals great distribution.
And can you talk quickly about the power of the email list?
Yeah, totally. So
because that's another thing we talk about, and filmmakers
yes.
are like, what do we do with an email list? I'm like, you've no idea. So please explain it to them.
So first of all, email is not dead. I think email is single-handedly the most powerful marketing platform there is, right? Mm-hmm. Because the return on investment is outrageously high. Mm-hmm. So, unlike Google AdWords, where you have to spend a fortune to get those clicks, once you've collected an email address, your cost of having that email and using that email, it's almost zero, right? Like you're hopefully using MailChimp or some other great outlet like that. You're paying a little bit each month, but you can then send this. You can send emails, weekly, biweekly, and get people to engage with your product or your film. And so, number one, email is not dead. Number two, don't be afraid to email more. I think a lot of people are like, oh, everybody hates email. I need to back off on email. But you know what? You don't. The reality is most people send too few emails. And if you're only sending an email once a month, you actually run the risk of your list going cold and people forgetting who you are and losing engagement. Mm-hmm. So if you're emailing weekly, and don't spam them, like send something interesting and useful. But, keeping up weekly correspondence is very powerful. So that's number two. And number three, don't be afraid to ask for a sale, whether that's actually physically like saying, hey, buy this, or saying, hey, go view this, or introduce us to somebody. Like having a call to action in an email is very important. So
right, it goes with the whole Gary Vaynerchuk jab, right hook vibe. You know that book, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's a great book.
If you don't ask, you won't receive, right? Like you must ask to receive. And so there's nothing wrong with having a call to action, and make sure it's clear and there's only one. Like don't have an email full of a million things to do. Have an email with a very concise one call to action that you want them to do, whether it's buy your film, watch your film, help people, hear about your film. Just one thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like, how'd you get that interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger? I asked.
Exactly. Yep. Over and over again.
Yeah. So, last two questions. I asked these questions of all of my guests. What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in life or in the business?
It's a great question. I think the lesson goes back to something we discussed earlier, which is, I tried to do everything myself for too long and realized that hiring people or getting other people involved is uncomfortable, which is a reason that I think a lot of us don't do it. It costs money, right? So that's another reason we don't do it.
Trust as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then relinquishing control is scary. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I did it, as soon as I started hiring people, getting other people involved, I immediately saw the light and realized, damn it, I wish I had done this earlier. Because, my first customer service representative, she was wonderful. She was much better than I was with the customers. So the customers were happy. And all of a sudden I had so many more hours in my week. My first marketing guy, he was so good at marketing. And all of a sudden I had so many more hours in my week to spend on building the company. So I think that's the lesson is, you need to get other people involved earlier, right? Like, don't be afraid. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to cost money, but I promise you it'll pay back, dividends.
Big time. And then what are your 3 favorite films of all time?
Whoa, man, that's a tough one. All right. So let me think about this. Okay. So Home Alone. I love Home Alone.
I love Home Alone. It's such a wonderful. It's not Christmas unless you watch Home Alone and until you watch Die Hard. But that's just me.
Yes. Dude, so it's funny. It's like my answers are not going to be deep. They're not going to be like AFI 100. Like
no.
I'm just thinking about the films that I will go back to time and time again. Mm-hmm. And every Christmas, it's Home Alone. For comedies, Old School, I think is just one of the. I just love Old School. It's just a classic Will Ferrell movie.
That's a great, probably one of his best.
I think probably one of his best, and all the others are templates of it. But and then third for an action movie, Godfather 2. I mean, I think it's just that is a classic.
So good.
So good.
So good. So where can people find you, Joel, and your companies?
Totally. So if you go to joelkentholland.com, it will just redirect you to my LinkedIn profile. But that's the best way to connect with me. And I love it when people connect with me on there. It's just a great way to stay in touch. You'll always have my up-to-date contact information. My email address is on there. It's all there. So connect with me on LinkedIn. And then for VideoBlocks, it's just videoblocks.com. If you're a contributor and you want to make money, and it costs nothing, go to contribute.videoblocks.com. Sign up is super simple. And then for graphics and photos, it's graphicstock.com. For music and sound effects, it's audioblocks.com.
Sounds good. Joel, man, you've been a wonderful guest, man. Thank you so much for spending time talking with me today.
Well, thank you, Alex. This has been a lot of fun.
So, guys, I told you it was, Joel is definitely that definition of hustle without question. I wish I would have been his age during the times of this technology, because I was hustling out at garage sales and doing all sorts of things to make my money when he was at that same age, 12, 13, 14 years old. I wish I would have had eBay. I wish I would have had Amazon. I wish I would have been able to start my own online business back then. But hey, it's just where the chips fell. That's just the year I was born, unfortunately. But I did go through the 80s, though, and that was a lot of fun. But anyway, guys, I really hope you got a lot out of that. Joel is an inspiration to me, and I'm hoping to turn Indie Film Hustle into a $30 million company within the next 2 or 3 years. So let's rock and roll, guys. But no, seriously, I'm really impressed with Joel and what he's been able to do. And he's an example of, seriously, what happens when you put your mind to it and just hustle hard, man. And that's hopefully a lesson that all of us can take from him and his story, is that there is no limit to what you can achieve as long as you hustle and you do it smart and you learn and you just keep going and going. And persistence is one of the keys to success in any area of your life. I'm telling you guys, persistence and hustle is going to get you much farther than just raw talent. All right, or luck for that matter. As always, if you want to get the show notes for this episode, it's indiefilmhustle.com/103. And again, I want to thank everybody who is decided to jump in on that special 1 month free of the Indie Film Syndicate, man. I know you guys, I see what you guys are watching. You guys are watching a lot, talking a lot on the Facebook groups, and really just enjoying the syndicate. So makes me really happy to see you guys inside and joining. So if you guys want to take a look at what all the hoopla is about, head over to indiefilmsyndicate.com. And guys, if you really love the podcast, I would really greatly appreciate you heading over to filmmakingpodcast.com and leaving a good review on iTunes. It really helps us out a lot, guys, and I would personally appreciate it a lot. And guys, also don't forget, we have a comedy fundraiser on Saturday, October 22nd at the Ice House in Pasadena, California at 8 p.m. And it's going to have basically a bunch of the stars from This Is Meg are going to go out there and put on a show. We're going to paint the barn, get dressed up, and put on a show. And all proceeds of the night will go to This Is Meg to help us with film festival submissions, some extra post stuff that we need to get done, and all sorts of stuff like that. But it would really help us out a lot. I'll be there. It's going to be Joe Reitman, who plays Eric in the movie, Carlos Alazraqui, who plays the amazing Tony Eckhart. We also have Sean Pulaski, who plays Cheryl in the movie, and of course Meg herself, Jilly, will be there, and I will be there as well. Don't worry, I won't be doing stand-up. I will just be in the audience. So again, it's at the Ice House in Pasadena. For tickets, call 626-577-1894. And it's only $20, guys, for a great night out, all right? So keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.